Tyler, what's good, man? How you doing?
I am doing great, Jerem. Thanks for having me on, man.
I can't wait for a home basketball game where we can be in this studio talking about Cougar hoops. It'll be here before we know it. We have a lot to talk about, and let's begin with kind of the news of yesterday, which is Jaxson Robinson continues at the Combine, and there's a report that if he does come back to college, probably going to Kentucky. Then there's no Waterman, who jumped in the portal on the last day, and he was seen visiting with the Louisville staff. Do you have any hope that either of those two guys could come back to BYU?
I mean, yes. The short answer is yes. Would love to see those guys back in BYU blue, but who knows? You know, the college landscape right now is just crazy, and so those guys, are testing their options and trying to see what's out there. But would love to see both of those guys back. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up at Louisville or Kentucky, but at the end of the day, like, I think that's priority number one, is trying to recruit your own guys back. And, we definitely have seen the value and how they fit with this core group of BYU guys. And so I'd love to see them back. I think BYU is a great spot for them and allows them to showcase who they are and their skill set. But yeah, who knows, man.
Jaxson Robinson is hoping to go pro either this year or next year. Do you feel like he's ready right now, or would another year be good for him?
I think another year would be good for him. I do think he is pro ready, but another year in college sports is not the worst thing right now, especially in the Big 12. I think it just adds another layer of experience for him and another step forward as far as playing against high-level competition and developing his game. And so, I think it's probably been an amazing experience going through the draft process and competing against those guys that will get drafted. I went through that whole process, was a part of a number of workouts, and so I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about, my game and where the areas that I needed to work on. And so, from my experience, I would have loved one more year to be able to go, okay, this is what they're looking for. These are the holes in my game, and this is where I need to get better. And so I do think he is a pro talent. I think he can make an NBA roster and provide good minutes. I mean, his length, his athleticism, his shooting ability, his ability to stretch the floor. I mean, we've seen him step up in really, really big moments and hit big shots this last year. And so I do think he's pro ready, but one more year of experience in high level college basketball wouldn't be a bad thing.
In Kevin Young's press conference, he mentioned that he wants BYU to be the place for young men to come to develop and go to the NBA. BYU's not had a great history of this, Tyler. What actually has to happen for BYU to be that kind of place?
Well, I think, a couple of thoughts. One, I think trying to change the narrative around the type of BYU guys is something that Kevin Young, I think he wants to do and is capable of doing. His history and track record, the guys that he's worked with, the guys that he's developed in the NBA, it speaks for itself, right? The relationships he's developed. And so I think, people have this perception of BYU guys that, they can shoot and they can't play defense. And I think, I think that narrative is going to change. I think Kevin Young is going to, bridge that gap of, bringing NBA guys around. He's still trying to round out his staff and the type of players that he wants to bring in, lots of scholarships open. And so I think the type of talent that he attracts, I think, the guys that are going to come and, be around the program, cheer for the program. I mean, we've seen a number of NBA guys already talk about Kevin Young and what he has done for them. And so I think just, bridging that gap of NBA and BYU, I think Kevin Young's the right guy to push that forward.
One of those guys BYU hopes eventually makes it in that capacity as a top 100 guy that BYU swung, and Brody Kozlowski, who has a similar skill set to Noah Waterman. Does getting Brody ease the pain of potentially losing Noah, Tyler?
Oh, well, for sure. Yeah. Brody is an incredible talent. I've known Brody for a long time now. And I mean, his ability to shoot the ball is really, really special. Has a great feel for the game. But, you know, I first met Brody when he was probably seventh grade. And, you know, we would do some workouts together, and I was just completely amazed at how well he could shoot the ball back then, how high of a release he had, how consistent he shot it. And then to see what he did in high school and in his club team and the success that he had, I think he's a guy that is college ready right now to make a big impact. And he can stretch the floor. You get him good looks, and I mean, he's capable of knocking down 6 or 7 threes in a game, maybe even more if he gets hot. And so I'm really excited to watch him play. But you know, we've seen it, Jerem, this last year, the step forward that Noah took. You know, it was surprising in a lot of ways, just how the intensity was different. He played with an energy and a passion that was noticeably different, you know, on both ends of the floor, rebounding, and his ability to stretch the floor. I think if you can bring Noah back, I mean, you got Noah and Brody there at the 4 spots, you know, and both those guys are unselfish dudes and, you know, want to play the right way. And so I would love to see the combo of both of them. But Brody definitely helps fill that gap if Noah leaves.
8 players are on the roster currently, 5 scholarships available. So the 8 are Hall, Saunders, Stewart, Baker, Nell, Foose, Keita, and Kozlowski. 5 scholarships available as mentioned. Is the best player on the team on the roster, or will it be someone that BYU brings in?
That's a tough question. You know, I think you always start with the guys that are there. I mean, we've seen incredible things out of Foose before, and I think he's a great guy to build around. I mean, capable scorer. He's taken big steps forward in his game. I think the addition of Ali Khalifa last year helped Foose expand his game a little bit, as far as, you know, playing up top and, you know, being able to pass and get other guys involved. But Foose brings an element that I think you have to kind of build around. You know, Kevin Young has been talking big about the talent he's trying to bring in, and, you know, wants to bring size and athleticism in. You see the guys that, you know, they have BYU on their list, like guys like Elijah Crawford, this 4-star recruit that was committed to Stanford. I mean, those are the guys that they're attracting right now. That I mean, it's high level talent, guys that want to win and are college ready. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all if they bring somebody in that has, you know, a major impact. I'm really excited. I mean, Dallin Hall and Richie Saunders, those 2 dudes, I thought took big steps forward this last season, have a year of experience under their belt in the Big 12. You've got to start with those guys. You add Dawson Baker to that mix, a healthy Dawson Baker. I mean, the short stint that we saw of him last year, I thought was really positive. His ability to create his own shot, his shooting ability, his experience. I mean, he's been a part of winning programs and teams. He'll be a big, you know, force in that locker room. Trevin Nell's obviously been, you know, around a long time and can provide a lot of experience. Really excited about Keba. I've known Keba for a while, and I mean, I tell people this, like, there was only one guy in my whole basketball career playing overseas and playing in college that was more athletic than Keba. And like, I've seen Keba do some stuff that not many guys can do. And so I'm really excited for BYU see what he brings to the table. A rim protector, and he's trying to rip the rim off the backboard, and so it'll be really fun.
If Noah Waterman doesn't return, do you need to then start Keba Keita because you'd just be a little too small, perhaps, with Foose at the 5? Because Waterman was 6'11" and could kind of mitigate some of that difference. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the other guys that Kevin Young brings in, right? Yeah. I think they would like someone with size and athleticism, but can also stretch the floor a little bit, and hopefully that's something that Keba can develop a little more is that outside game. But I wouldn't be surprised if Keba gets in that starting lineup. I mean, we saw it over and over and over again in the Big 12. It is about athleticism and keeping up with some of these athletes and rebounding and being able to compete on the defensive end of the floor, having a rim protector. All those things make such a big difference, and so it wouldn't surprise me at all if he creeps into the starting lineup.
We are just under 6 months away from the start of BYU men's basketball season, but here we are talking about it every day. Tyler, we appreciate the time, man.
Hey, thanks, Jeremy.